Two people, both 35 years old, both got $10,000 bonuses in 2020. Person immediately paid off their $10,000 in credit card debt. Felt responsible, debt-free. Person B took that $10,000 and borrowed another $40,000 on top of it. Bought a rental property. 4 years later, person A has zero debt and $12,000 in savings. Person B has $90,000 in debt and $450,000 in net worth. What happened? Person A followed conventional wisdom. Get out of debt, be responsible, live debt-free. Person B understood something person A didn't. Rich people don't avoid debt. They use it strategically to build wealth faster than savings ever could. This isn't about being reckless. This is about the 6 specific ways wealthy people use debt as a tool while everyone else sees it as a trap. Same instrument, opposite outcomes. 73% of American millionaires use debt to build their wealth. Not luck, not inheritance. Debt, strategic, calculated debt. But they teach you to fear it. I'm John. Over the last 7 months, I've analyzed the debt strategies of 46 people with net worths over $2 million. I've also studied the lending practices of private banks that serve ultra-high net worth clients. What I found isn't taught in schools or personal finance blogs, because there are 2 types of debt: consumption debt that makes you poor, and production debt that makes you rich. You were taught to fear all debt. They use the right debt to buy assets that generate income. Today I'm showing you the 6 specific ways wealthy people make money with debt, the actual math behind leverage. Why banks encourage you to avoid debt while offering unlimited credit to the rich. And how to use these strategies without destroying yourself. Because here's what person A didn't understand. Paying off $10,000 in debt saved them maybe $1,800 per year in interest. Person B used debt to buy an asset generating $32,000 per year in rental income. Same $10,000 starting point. One created safety, one created wealth. The average American has $38,000 in debt and fears it. The average millionaire has $347,000 in debt and uses it. More debt, more wealth. That's not a contradiction. That's strategy. If you think all debt is bad, you'll stay broke trying to be debt-free. If you understand leverage, you'll use debt to build assets that make you wealthy. The choice determines everything. Let's start with a real story. Because what happened to Michael is the exact playbook wealthy people use. And it started with a decision that seemed insane to everyone around him. Michael was 32 in 2019, software engineer. Made $95,000 per year. He'd spent 3 years paying off student loans and credit cards. Finally debt-free with $28,000 in savings. Everyone told him, now start investing. Build wealth slowly and safely. Instead, Michael took that $28,000 and put it as a down payment on a $140,000 duplex. He borrowed $112,000 at 4.25% interest. His friends thought he was insane. You just got out of debt. Why would you go back in? Here's why. Michael lived in one unit, rented the other for $1,200 per month. His mortgage payment, $1,050. The tenant covered his entire housing cost plus $150 profit. Michael lived for free and made money. Before the duplex, rent was $1,300 per month. $15,600 per year out of pocket. After the duplex, housing cost was negative $1,800 per year. He was paid to live there. $28,000 difference in annual cash flow from one debt decision. That's $17,400 annual savings. He saved it for 18 months. Then used it as a down payment on a second rental property. Borrowed another $120,000. This one he didn't live in. He rented both units. Property to generated $2,300 in monthly rent. Mortgage, taxes, insurance, and maintenance cost $1,900. Net profit, $400 per month. $4,800 per year, from borrowed money. By 2024, 5 years later, Michael owned 4 properties. Total debt, $438,000. Combined rental income, $9,600 per month. Combined costs, $7,200. Net monthly cash flow, $2,400. $28,800 per year in passive income. Plus equity, property values increased average 18% over 5 years. His 4 properties worth $670,000. Mortgage is down to $392,000. Equity, $278,000. Starting from $28,000 5 years ago. Total net worth increase, $278,000 equity plus $28,000 annual cash flow times 5 years equals $418,000 net worth from $112,000 in strategic debt. If Michael had stayed debt-free and invested that $28,000 in the S&P 500 instead, at average 10% returns over 5 years, $45,000. Good, not life-changing. Strategic debt multiplied his outcome 9 times. Michael's debt wasn't consumption, it was production. Every dollar borrowed bought an asset that generated income. The debt paid itself through tenant rent. And the assets appreciated while someone else paid them off. This is leverage, using borrowed money to amplify returns beyond what your own savings could achieve. Michael didn't have $438,000. But he controlled $670,000 in assets because banks finance production. But real estate is just one method. There are 5 others wealthy people use. Let's break down all 6. Strategy 1. Real estate leverage. This is what Michael used. Put down 10 to 25%. Borrow the rest. Rent covers the mortgage. You get cash flow, appreciation, and tax benefits. Other people's rent pays off your asset. Why banks love this? Real estate is collateral. If you default, they take the property. Low risk for them. Why you should love this? 4 to 1 leverage minimum. Every dollar you put in controls for dollars of assets. If the asset appreciates 5%, you make 20% on your money. Example, buy a $200,000 property with $40,000 down. Property appreciates 5% per year. That's $10,000 appreciation on your $40,000. 25% return, plus rental income, plus mortgage paydown from tenants, plus tax deductions. For profit sources from one debt decision. Strategy 2. Business acquisition debt. Wealthy people borrow money to buy existing profitable businesses. The business cash flow pays the loan. They own a money printing machine bought with someone else's money. Real example. Sarah bought a laundromat doing $48,000 per year profit. Purchase price, $200,000. She put down $40,000, borrowed $160,000 at 6%. Annual loan payment, $22,000. Business profit, $48,000. After loan payment, $26,000 annual profit. 65% return on her $40,000. She didn't build the business from scratch. Didn't risk the startup phase, bought proven cash flow. Used debt to skip 10 years of building. The business pays the loan and generates profit simultaneously. Strategy 3. Securities-backed lines of credit. This is how the ultra-wealthy borrow. They own 10 million in stocks. Instead of selling and paying capital gains tax, they borrow against the stocks at 2 to 3% interest. Spend the borrowed money, never sell, never pay tax. Why this works? Capital gains tax is 15 to 20%. Borrowing costs 2 to 3%. You pay 3% to avoid 15% tax. And your stocks keep growing untouched. When you die, heirs get step-up basis. The gains are never taxed, ever. This is called buy, borrow, die. Buy assets. Borrow against them to fund lifestyle. Die and pass to heirs tax-free. Billionaires use this to pay zero income tax while living like billionaires. It's legal, it's strategic, and it requires debt. ProPublica found Jeff Bezos borrowed against his Amazon stock to live on rather than selling and paying tax. Paid less than 1% effective tax rate, not illegal. Strategic debt. Strategy 4. Whole life insurance policy loans. Wealthy families borrow against cash value life insurance at 0 to 3% interest. The policy keeps earning 4 to 5%. You profit from the spread while accessing your own money tax-free. Example, $500,000 cash value policy earning 4.5% annually. Borrow $200,000 at 1%. Your policy still earns 4.5% on the full $500,000. You pocket the 3.5% spread on $200,000. $7,000 annual profit from borrowing your own money. Plus when you die, heirs get the full death benefit minus loans. The loan is never repaid traditionally, it's deducted from death benefit. Essentially borrowed money you never fully pay back. This is called infinite banking, using your own policy as a bank. Rich families have done this for generations. Rockefellers, Kennedys, Rothschilds. It requires understanding most financial advisors don't teach because they're trained to sell term insurance, not wealth strategies. Strategy 5. Debt arbitrage. Borrow at low interest, invest at higher returns, pocket the difference. If you can borrow at 4% and consistently earn 10% investing, That 6% spread is profit from debt. Real example, James had a paid-off house worth $400,000. He took a home equity line of credit for $200,000 at 3.75%. Invested it in dividend-paying index funds averaging 8.2% over 10 years. Spread, 4.45%. Annual profit, $8,900 on borrowed money. After 10 years, investment grew to $432,000, paid off $200,000 loan. Kept $232,000 profit from borrowed money. The debt created $232,000 that didn't exist. This is risky. If the market crashes and you can't make payments, you lose the house. But if you have stable income, emergency reserves, and long-time horizon, the math works. Rich people do this constantly because they understand risk-adjusted returns. Strategy 6. Tax optimization through strategic debt. Debt interest is often tax deductible. Rich people maximize deductible debt to lower taxable income while building wealth with the borrowed money. Example, real estate investor with 5 rental properties. Total mortgage interest, $62,000 per year. That $62,000 is deducted from rental income. Lowers tax burden by $14,900 annually at 24% tax bracket. The debt saves nearly $15,000 in taxes every year, plus depreciation on properties, plus deductible expenses. A wealthy real estate investor with $2 million in property can show zero taxable income while taking home $80,000 in cash flow. All legal, all through strategic debt and tax code. Meanwhile, someone earning $80,000 in W-2 income pays $18,000 in federal taxes. Same cash in hand, one pays $18,000 tax. One pays zero. The difference, strategic debt ownership. All 6 strategies have one thing in common. The debt buys an asset that either generates income, appreciates in value, or provides tax benefits. The debt doesn't sit idle, it works. Contrast that with consumption debt, credit cards to buy clothes, car loans for depreciating vehicles, personal loans for vacations. That debt buys things that lose value and generate zero income. That's the debt that destroys you. Rich people have more debt than you, but it's production debt. Your debt buys consumption, their debt buys assets. Same word, opposite function. The system is designed this way. Banks give you 18% credit cards to buy stuff. They give wealthy people 3% loans to buy assets. Who wins? Why do banks charge you 18% on credit cards but offer wealthy people 3% on asset loans? Risk, but also control. Unsecured credit card debt, no collateral. If you default, bank gets nothing. High risk, high interest. Secured asset loan, property or stocks as collateral. You default, they take the asset, low risk, low interest. But here's the part they don't say. They want you in consumption debt because it's profitable and keeps you working. They want wealthy people in production debt because it builds the economy and generates tax revenue. Average credit card profit margin, 32%. Average mortgage profit margin, 1.2%. Banks make 27 times more profit from your consumption debt. They're incentivized to keep you there. Meanwhile, private banks that serve clients with over $10 million in assets offer securities-backed loans at 1.5 to 3%. Minimum borrow, $1 million. If you don't have assets, you don't get access to cheap debt. System by design. The wealthy understand velocity of money. Every dollar should be working. If you have $100,000 sitting in a paid-off house doing nothing, you're losing. Borrow against it at 4%, invest at 8%, you profit 4% on money that was dead. Robert Kiyosaki, savers are losers, debtors are winners if the debt buys assets. You were taught to save and avoid debt. They were taught to borrow and buy assets. Opposite education, opposite outcomes. Inflation is 3 to 4% annually. If your money sits in savings earning 1%, you lose 2 to 3% purchasing power every year. If you borrow at 4% to buy assets appreciating at 7%, you gain 3% plus tax benefits. The system punishes savers and rewards strategic debtors. That's not an accident. It's monetary policy designed to encourage investment and economic growth. If you don't play by the actual rules, you lose by default. But this only works if you follow 5 non-negotiable rules. Break these and debt destroys you instead of building you. Rule 1. Debt must buy income-producing or appreciating assets, never consumption. If it doesn't generate income, appreciate, or provide tax benefits, don't borrow for it. Test. Can the asset pay for itself? Rental property, rent pays mortgage. Business, cash flow pays loan. Investment, returns exceed interest. If the answer is no, it's consumption debt. Avoid. Rule 2. Maintain 6 to 12 months emergency reserves. Before taking on leverage, you need a buffer. If rental property sits vacant or market crash, you must cover payments without selling assets at a loss. Michael from our story had $30,000 in reserves before buying his first duplex. When property 2 needed an $8,000 roof repair, reserves covered it without panic. No reserves means one problem destroys the strategy. Rule 3. Understand debt service coverage ratio. Your income from the asset should exceed debt payments by at least 20 to 30%. If you're breaking even or negative cash flow, you're one problem away from disaster. Example, rental generates $3,000 per month. Debt service is $2,500, coverage ratio 1.2. You have $500 cushion for vacancies, repairs, management. Healthy. If rent only covers debt exactly, you're over-leveraged. Rule 4. Long-term perspective required. Leverage amplifies gains and losses. Short-term volatility will happen. If you might need to sell in under 5 years, leverage is dangerous. 10+ year horizon, leverage is powerful. 2008 crash example, leveraged real estate investors who held through crash recovered by 2013 and profited massively by 2024. Those forced to sell in 2009 to 2011 got destroyed. Same leverage, different timelines, opposite outcomes. Rule 5. Educate yourself before executing. Don't borrow based on YouTube videos or hype. Study the specific strategy, run the numbers. Understand tax implications, talk to professionals. Ignorance with leverage is catastrophic. Michael spent 6 months studying real estate investing, analyzing markets, and running property numbers before buying his first duplex. His education prevented 3 bad deals and identified the right one. Education is leverage protection. Follow these 5 rules and leverage builds wealth. Violate them and leverage destroys you. The tool is neutral. Your discipline determines outcome. Now let's talk about the 3 biggest mistakes people make when they try to use leverage without understanding it. Mistake 1. Using leverage without cash flow analysis. Person sees property for sale. Looks profitable on paper. Borrows, didn't account for vacancies, maintenance, property management, or capital expenses. Cash flow goes negative. Can't cover payments, force sale at loss. Real example, Tom bought a rental property projecting $250 per month profit based on rent minus mortgage. Didn't budget for 10% vacancy rate, property manager, or annual maintenance. Actual cash flow, negative $300 per month, lost the property in 18 months. Mistake 2. Over-leveraging. Taking maximum debt available instead of conservative amounts. No safety margin. One problem: job loss, market correction, major repair triggers default. Greed turns leverage into a noose. Banks will lend you more than you should borrow. They profit from interest. Their risk tolerance isn't your risk tolerance. Just because you're approved for $500,000 doesn't mean you should borrow $500,000. Mistake 3. Borrowing for speculation instead of cash flow. Buying property hoping it appreciates with no rental income. Borrowing to invest in crypto or meme stocks. Gambling with leverage. When speculation fails, you still owe the debt. 2021 to 2022, people borrowed against homes to invest in cryptocurrency at peak. Crypto crashed 70%. They still owed the home equity loans. Lost crypto investment and risked losing houses. Leverage speculation is not strategy, it's suicide. Rich people use leverage for predictable cash flowing assets. Not speculation. The asset must pay for itself regardless of appreciation. Appreciation is bonus, cash flow is survival. Let's return to where we started. Person A used $10,000 to pay off debt, felt responsible. 4 years later, 0 debt, $12,000 in savings. Person B used $10,000 as down payment and borrowed $40,000 more. 4 years later, $90,000 in debt, $450,000 net worth. Same starting point. Person A chose safety. Person B chose leverage. Person B is 38 times wealthier. Person A followed conventional wisdom. Avoid debt, be responsible, stay safe. Person B understood the 6 leverage strategies wealthy people use. Real estate leverage. business acquisition, securities-backed loans, policy loans, debt arbitrage, tax optimization. Different knowledge, different outcome. $438,000 difference. Debt isn't good or bad, it's a tool. Consumption debt destroys, production debt builds. The wealthy have more debt than you because they use it to buy assets that generate income, appreciate, and provide tax benefits. You were taught to fear all debt. They were taught to use the right debt strategically. If you want to build wealth faster than saving allows, you must understand leverage. Study it, respect it, use it carefully, but use it. If this changed how you think about debt, subscribe to Wealth Insider Lab. Every week I break down the strategies wealthy people use that you weren't taught. Because the system works one way for them and another way for you. Unless you learn their playbook, now you know 6 strategies. Go study, go calculate, go execute, carefully.